If I could go back in time, these are 8 harsh truths that I wish I could have told my younger self going into my first year as a nurse. I'm going over those 8 things and going to be sharing my own experiences with each one. So make sure you stay till the end because I'm going to be giving you real life experiences so you don't make the same mistakes yourself. Now, just to give you a little context, I am a new grad ICU nurse. I just finished my first year, so I'm not really considered new grad anymore, but I still have that fresh experience in my head of what it was like to go through my first year. And to be honest, a lot of these things I still consistently struggle with are still things that I remind myself of to this day. And just a caveat, it almost took me a full year into being a nurse to learn some of these things. So make sure you stay tuned so that you get ready to make some money. You're ready to care for your patients because you definitely go into nursing to care for patients and not to make money. All right, let's get into it. The number one is speaking up for yourself. This is one that I feel like I definitely didn't really know in the beginning. We are often taught in nursing school to advocate for your patients, advocate for everyone else, but you're really honestly advocating for yourself is really the last thing you really think about doing. But it's so important as a new grad nurse to be able to speak for yourself because you can get certain assignments or you can be known as that nurse that always gets the isolation patients or the dirty patients, and you often can really get abused in nursing, to be honest. And that's the ugly, harsh truth of it, is that management will sometimes abuse that and take advantage of you if you continue to tolerate that kind of treatment. So definitely speak up for yourself, right? Being a good patient advocate is important, but being able to advocate for yourself is just as important. Now, the second one would be definitely that dirty work is part of the job. That's an ugly truth that I think I knew, but I didn't realize how much of poop that I was actually going to be scooping up. And that's part of the reality of nursing. I think a lot of people actually avoid nursing for this very reason. But don't expect your CNAs or your techs to be the one to clean your patients. You're taking a very big role in that as well. And that's something that I realized and learned along the way is that this is part of the job. This is cleaning. You're going to see a lot of poop. You're going to see a lot of pee, and you're going to probably get some on you at some point, and it's not going to be pretty. But the ugly truth is that that's part of the job, and just know that, and know that there's an end to your shifts, right? That really helped me, is that knowing that every shift is 12 hours, and you get to go home at the end of the day, but your patients don't. And so really feel that heart out for them and feel that you're doing something that's really caring for them, and that something that they can't do by themselves, and that's why you're there. You're an essential worker, right, as a nurse. And so that's something that I think I really carry with me as I go through my shifts and as I kind of process difficult moments of whenever I'm feeling, oh, I need to do this again, or oh man, I'm just gonna have to clean this poop, this really sucks. Going to number 3 kind of relates with the last one, is that management will manage, right? And what I mean by this is you'll notice in hospitals, and I've gotten kind of different experiences with asking around with other new grad programs, but there's this sense of micromanagement. A lot of charge nurses, a lot of supervisors sometimes will breathe down your back, and it's nothing on you. It's just the fact that you're in a new grad program and that they don't necessarily have the trust for you yet, and that's reasonable to understand, right? Because you haven't really developed the skills, you don't have the experience. There's more liability involved, there's more risk, but just know that that's something to expect, because I went in thinking that I was going to have the freedom of being able to be my own nurse, and this is going to be great, and I'm on my own, and I was actually really excited to be on my own for the first day when I was off orientation. But I realized that there's always going to be someone kind of breathing down your back, and it's a little bit uncomfortable. Now, going into the fourth one, this one's really interesting, is that hard is easy and easy is hard. And what I mean by that is it's actually easy to learn the hard skills of nursing, but it was really hard to learn the soft skills. And what I mean by that is it's the skills are easy to pick up, putting an NG tube in, or knowing how to give oral care to your patients, or bedpan, or cleaning your patients, learning how to do log rolls and changing the sheets and the chucks and changing the pillowcase, all these things, learning how to suction. I can go on and on, but those things are really easy to pick up actually after a while. But the really hard part of nursing is honestly dealing with the people. And that's something that I didn't really realize until like later on, probably months into nursing, is that like people are the problem. Like, I'm not saying patients are annoying and whatever, but you're going to realize that nursing is a people profession, and because of that you're going to be dealing with people, and you have to learn how to deal with the ones that you don't necessarily get along with or you don't agree with. And there are going to be patients that are more entitled than others, and that's all part of the job and part of the figuring out that you have to do as a new grad nurse. But that process is also, really, really beautiful, and more so like a self-development journey, if you will. And so you definitely have to see it that way. It's going to take time for you to develop those skills, how to de-escalate, how to communicate what you need and what the patient needs, and how to communicate that you can't always be at bedside because you have more than one patient, and there may be other patients that are more critical, and there's different priorities, and you'll kind of learn when to use certain tones, when to be more stern, when to be a little more soft and understanding. And there's just, you develop those skills over time. And so it's a very unique skill, I think, that transfers over to other areas of your life, which is really helpful too. I notice myself being a little bit more therapeutic when I talk to my family or when I talk to friends, and they're like, whoa, like you're actually really good at being a therapist. I'm like, yeah, I kind of do that for a living, except I just don't have that title, right? But as a nurse, like, you are responsible kind of for de-escalating, for doing a lot of things that therapists do. So, that's kind of part of your job, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you see it, but definitely use that as a learning opportunity. Number 5 is that people expect you to know what to do. And this one probably doesn't shock you, but I don't know, it can get kind of annoying, I think, when your family members or your friends, like, once they figure out that you're a nurse, they come to you with all these health questions. I'm sure if you're a nurse watching this, like, you know exactly what I mean. But people come to you left and right thinking like, oh, you have the answers to my health problems. And so they'll tell you like, I've got the cyst on my foot that has been growing, and it's turning a certain color. Should I be worried about it? It's like, I don't need to know about your cysts, girl. Like, no, like, just tell your doctor. But there's the other side of it that's like, I also don't necessarily have all the answers. And sometimes when people come to me those questions, like, there's almost this guilt feeling of like, oh man, I don't know how to help you. Like, I can figure it out. Maybe I can Google some things, but just because I'm a nurse doesn't mean I have all the answers, right? And a lot of times as a new grad nurse, you develop that over time, and you learn to think, ahead, as we'll get into later in this video. But in the beginning, you're like taking orders from a doctor. So a lot of it is you can't really think on your own just yet. And so it just comes like a little bit prematurely, I feel like, when maybe if you're a more experienced nurse, I think those questions are more invited. But then if you're like a new grad nurse, it's really hard to answer those questions. And I hate telling people like, honestly, I don't know, maybe you should ask your doctor, because, you want to help as a nurse. You're going into this profession to be of aid to other people. And so, that's something that you have to deal with. Now, number 6, you're rich. This was the harsh truth that, like, when you tell people you're a nurse, like, they just expect that you make buttloads of money. And even though it's true, like, nurses definitely get paid and compensated very well, right? A lot of people are starting with, if not close to 6 figures, right? Which no nurse is probably complaining about, because the work is also equally as hard. But, that's something to keep in mind, I think, is like, honestly, I've kind of almost stopped telling people that I'm a nurse sometimes, because I've almost noticed that when you do tell people, there's a certain stigma that they have, and then all of a sudden their idea of you is like, oh, you make a lot of money, you think you're all that. And sometimes I just don't want that to kind of especially when I'm meeting new people. I like to just tell them that, hey, I'm a healthcare worker. I work alongside a lot of doctors, but I won't mention that I'm a nurse. And that's just something that I've found that has really helped me kind of avoid that question of, because I've literally had family members and people ask me, like, so how much are you actually making? Or like, how much? And your friends will ask you, like, how much are you? So how much is it that you're making? Like, those aren't questions that you should have to answer, unfortunately, but people will ask you anyways, and that's just the reality of it. But learning how to not avoid those questions, but how to deflect them a little bit and maybe set yourself up for not going down that conversation road is a skill to definitely pick up. And it's good. I mean, you should be making money for what you do, because nursing is hard. It's a hard career. And if you haven't started yet, you're going to figure that out pretty soon, pretty shortly. But at the end of the day, like, don't feel like you have to feel pressured to tell other people that you make a lot of money, because that's honestly the least important part of the job, right? It's about what you do and not how much you make. Going to the next one, number 7, is anticipation and preparation are key, right? So what I mean by this is, as an ICU nurse, it's so important for you to pick up the ability, the skill to anticipate. And you learn kind of along the way, but the harsh truth is that if you aren't able to see something coming, it's probably going to come and surprise you. In the ICU, it's very important that you are able to kind of anticipate, because anything can happen at any time, and you always want to think the mindset that my preceptor told me was that expect the worst. Prepare for the worst and expect for the best, right? And that's a mindset that I take into every shift now, with that understanding that things could go south really quickly, but I know exactly what I need to do, where I need to get it, and who I need to be there at bedside to help me out. And so, those are the things to keep in mind. It'll save you a lot of stress down the road. It'll save you a lot of trouble, just because, it's something that you saw coming, and so it doesn't really take you by surprise as much. The last one here I have for you, number 8, is that you don't need to start at a big name hospital. That's the hard truth. Like, it doesn't matter if you work at UCLA, Ronald Reagan ICU, or USC Keck. I'm just here in San Francisco, and so those are the big hospitals, or Stanford, or whatever it is, like VA hospital. Like, it doesn't matter as much, because I mean, I can speak from experience that, like, any hospital you get into, you're just going to get experience. And I just say I think I struggled with that question a lot, because when I was trying to apply for hospitals and for jobs, people were telling me, don't settle for anything less than the unit you want. And then other people were telling me, just work the first job that you get, because it's competitive enough. And I think there's truth to both sides, right? I think it's important to pursue what you want to do, and not settle and not give in. But it's also equally important to, sometimes just get your foot in the door and then worry about the option, because the options will open up later on. And so I think that's definitely something that I wish, they told me before going into nursing, because it's kind of a harsh truth of, like, how hard it is to get a job, your first job. Like, everyone says nursing's so easy, isn't everyone hiring? But the reality of it is that it's still a high impacted career. It still takes a lot of work to get into. It still takes, there's a lot of competition involved. And so that's something that, just to keep in mind as you consider your options of going into your first job. Now, working as a new grad nurse is very hard work. And if you don't have the mindsets to make sure you're going into the shift the right way, then you're not going to be set up for success. So check out this video right here to get your mindset right. I'll see you in the next one.